Welcome to the August 14th meeting of the Finance Committee of Wareham. We're meeting tonight in the Selectmen's room as a test. If you have any cellular devices, please put them in the off or silent position as to not disrupt the conduct of the meeting. Madam Clerk, a roll call if you please. Thank you very much. Remember tonight when you're talking to bring the microphone. You don't have to eat it, but bring it closer to your faces. All right, thank you. Anyone here for citizens participation? Wow, not a soul. Okay, thank you very much. Town Administrator's Report.
Mind if I talk while I implement?
You have a microphone.
Bob back there? Bob, can you hear me? All right. So Bob's great. So we're going to try and see if we can see the July expenditure, and that'd be July FY14 expenditure report from the laptop. I have paper copies for everyone, but let's see if this functions as a test as well. In the meanwhile, I was hoping to ask the Finance Committee about the ambulance.
You mean what we talked about earlier?
Yeah. Wanna hold off on that?
Yeah, let's do this first, and then we can have that discussion.
All right. So I don't know if there's another topic you want to take out of order while I get this.
Let's take the FinCom bills out of order. Kelly sent out a memo to me. Basically, it says, although the FinCom does not generate many bills during the year, the following action is needed by the FinCom when bills come forth. All bills need to be voted upon by the Finance Committee in the future. Right now, the Finance Committee needs to either vote to delegate a FinCom member to sign bills when voted on, or a majority of FinCom will need to sign all bills when voted on. I'll do the last part too. Personally, I feel a delegate should be assigned to sign all bills when voted upon. It makes the process easier and has worked for the past 17 years. Any discussion on this at all? Members?
I have no problem having a delegate assigned to sign bills.
If it's worked for 17 years, I don't have a problem with the delegate either.
Further, I would like to make a motion that we delegate Mr. McDonald as chair of the board. Okay.
Second.
For discussion. Actually, I'm not sure what the legalities of it is, but I believe Kelly in the past has signed the bills. Is that correct? No. Okay. Okay. Well, then guess we'll go to a vote then. All those in favor of the chairman signing all Finance Committee bills that come forth, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? I guess that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 0, 0. That was easy. You about ready?
Yeah, if the screen comes up. We have to use this computer. I can't use my
Okay.
Apple to plug into the system.
That's fine. So you ready to go? No? Okay.
It's not coming up on the screen yet.
Well, we can also just, no, well. Obviously this laptop's not going to work tonight, so why don't we just look at these manually tonight and then we'll fix whatever problem it is? Is that? And you can bring an IT in
Yeah.
guy that knows more about this than you?
I fired him, took over his salary.
That was a bad deal.
And here he comes.
For all of us.
Yep, that would not be a good idea.
Well, we may have a possibility of that.
Oh, thank you. That's pretty thick.
We got one more copy over there.
It will eventually come up, but we might as well start anyways. I'd like the input back on these, because what I'm trying to do is, I understand these are hard to read, so we've expanded the print, and it's gone from about 8 pages to 15, but it also segregates it by the general government, and then if you go through, you'll see education as a separate.
Do you want to explain what this is they're looking at, just for the record, please?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
This is our expenditure report, so it'd be for the month of July in fiscal year 2014. So July 1, 2013 through July 31st, 2013. It would have the departmental expenditures. The only ones this one would not have is EMS and water pollution control, because this particular one doesn't have that set up. Those would be separate ones. So I think once Guy comes back, I'm supposed to have that for you as well. So if you go through it, you'll see continued appropriations. That would be anything brought over from the previous fiscal year, whether it was amounts encumbered or if there was any POs outstanding, which really it would be from the previous year. So the second column is the original budget. So you would see town meeting 11,540. The third would be budget revisions, which if we went to town meeting, changed whatever the budget amount was, transferred money in, transferred money out. That's where the revision is. So the next column would be the revised budget or the updated budget. After that, you have the year-to-date expenditures. So again, that's for the month of July. Outstanding purchase orders, that's a column we have, although the Vadar system does not effectively do purchase orders. We still have that. Unobligated balance is the leftover balance. The percent expended year to date is exactly that, what portion of the budget has been expended. And then if you break it down to 12 months, you have the expected percent expended year to date. So when going through this, probably the easiest thing to do is you start looking at the percent expended year to date versus the expected. If the actual expended is greater than the expected, you would want to look at that and see what's the possible cause of that. You'll usually see a higher amount for certain departments, especially in expenses, the first or the beginning of the year. That's when your dues are paid. That's when we have our obligations for some of the maintenance contracts. That would be dues, so for Mass Municipal Association and so forth and so on. So basically, your beginning of the year bills that you'd pay. So, would you like me to go through it?
Well, does anyone have any questions so far? Yes.
Thank you. So this is something that we've been looking for several years, and I appreciate it's in a format that I can actually understand. But when I look at something like the percentage year-to-date, and I see that the selectmen's budget has spent close to 50% already, that's not really a concern, because like you say, those upfront costs, we expect them to pay them out in July, so that's not an issue.
Correct.
So you've looked through this.
Usually what will happen is we try and write a memo that's attached to this for the cover. But this time we're going through it verbally, and we'll have a memo. Would actually be prepared for the next selectmen's meeting. I just haven't realistically had the time to type it up.
Just a general comment. In the future, if we're going to do this on a monthly basis, it helps us to get it out to us electronically so that we can review it, as well as the letter that is attached so that we can review it, and it's going to either spurn a lot of questions coming out of us or stifle a lot of questions coming out of us.
Sure.
They're probably unnecessary anyway, but you know, if you just basically glance through the report, we obviously look at 2 or 3 areas that have, it's summertime, we look at the policeman, we look at the harbor master, we look at things that have a heavy amount of summer spending.
Correct.
And when we see them in line, then it, from my personal standpoint, it eases some of our concerns. Anyone?
So going forward, we're going to get one of these every month so that we know that the books have reconciled with the town?
This wouldn't be reconciled numbers. These would be end-of-the-month numbers. Then the reconciliation process of expenditures happens within the department. So this is simply what's been entered into our systems.
Will we be getting any notices from the departments or through the accounting office of what's been reconciled by the month in that letter that comes with this?
No, I wouldn't think so. Monthly reconciliations are just what's done between the departments.
And the accountants, right?
Yeah, but you'd have the treasurer collector's office and the accounting office that would do the monthly reconciliations.
So they wouldn't be sending anything to us for reconciliation?
No.
Is there anything in here that you see that's out of whack at this point? I see on page 15, under SRPEDD, we've spent 83% of the budget. Is that within your expectations?
On page 15. Are you talking the SERPED amount? Yeah, SERPED is a one-time yearly fee. So if we've expended under 100%, it's a good thing. There won't be any more costs associated with that. I believe left over in that budget is about $100 or $200. So I already printed out my copy, and probably what's happened is I printed out yours afterwards after doing it. So mine's page 11 of 15 for a SERPED. What do you guys have for?
I'm sorry, it is 11 of 13,
Okay.
15, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so SERPED. Yes, the SERPED assessment, we had budgeted $4,240. The actual assessment was $3,525, leaving a surplus for the year of $715.
So there's nothing in here that you see as being beyond your expectations?
No, but I think it's something that we should speak to so that the public as well understands what's going on. So if we went through page 1 of 15, as you saw, the selectmen's budget, the dues for the Mass Municipal Association per selectman is $840. So it actually costs $3,570 right at the beginning of the year. And then the Buzzards Bay Coalition, we pay a bi-yearly payment from the selectman's office. And that would be the 2 costs for them so far. So they wouldn't be, although, like you said, it's a high number, it's within line. It's what we usually see every year.
Thank you. To address the newer members, what this does is helps us figure out how accurate we were in budgeting. In a perfect world, you would be expecting 1 month would be equal to 8.3% of the budget. But because a lot of things are front-end loaded, paid at the beginning of the year, we're going to get the big expense up front and not so much at the end. But this gives a tool so we can watch each account and see if we've under budgeted, if there's been unexpected expenses. So at the end of the year, when they come looking at reserve transfers or anything else that might be out of whack, we will see it coming. We won't be blindsided by it, which is a great thing. And I just have one question for you, Derek, because I did notice that the mosquito control line that we budgeted 93,000 and some odd has not been spent. Are we doing mosquito control?
That's an assessment to us.
Oh, it's an assessment,
Yes.
okay. And-
So, and we've kept the assessments as they were budgeted, even though we know that they ended up being lower with the final cherry sheets.
Okay.
So we're just keeping the same number because technically they wouldn't change until you've changed the appropriations through town meeting.
Thank you.
So,
Because we're in a new room, and the best way to do this, instead of just speaking out, go through the chair. So that way we can, because the microphones are spread out, so we have to go through the chair. If you have a question, just give me that sign, and I'll get to that as well. The other issue I want to address is this reconciliation. What happens is, if they're going to reconcile it every month, we'll see whatever adjustment they made during reconciliation in the cumulative numbers for the years. We're not going to be able to see reconciliations here. It's just too cumbersome, and reconciliations are something I'm not really that interested in at this point, other than that they're doing them. We'll see reconciled numbers at the end of the year in the audit report, and also the audit findings will tell us how well they're doing on the reconciliation. So the numbers we're seeing are as close to accurate as they can be, given, oh, that's up on the screen, as close to accurate as they can be, and any adjustments they make, if they're falling in line with the reconciliation schedule, you'll see them in the cumulative number. It'll change due to the reconciliation. And I hope that we don't have huge swings in numbers. That means we're not making mistakes. Mr. Worthen?
Is it possible to put last year's numbers on here, number, just to show the variance from? And the other question is, I'm not assuming you can answer that right away. On page 13, there's this retirement and Luna.
Mr. Chairman, could we allow the town administrator to go through page by page, and as we come to the numbers, explain the differences? And then if there are any questions, we can follow up later? I think that would be really helpful.
That works. Let's try that, and then when we get to that, okay? You want to go through it?
so if you continue on to page 2 of 15, the next outlier you'd see is the audit. But that is the first bill of the audit. We are not billed monthly by them, so that is within line. You'll see a $15,000 expenditure. The next one that would be an outlier is the general services, and the big cost of that was $10,000 to refill our postage machine. So we will fill that thing up a few times a year.
Yeah, how long does $10,000 last?
It depends on whether we are sending out excise bills, so they can be used up like that. We're actually working with some of the departments, like the planning department, to change the way they charge. They use from the general services the monies to send out the notifications for hearings, and it adds up to several $1,000s quickly. Now, the people that are doing the applications pay for that, and that goes into the general fund revenue. However, it's not reimbursed to the general services. So the general services budget is always ending up in arrears because that funding doesn't go directly back to it. So what we'd like to try and do is get the people to actually pay for the notifications to go out themselves rather than have our department send them out. And it would actually lessen one step for our staff to do as well. On page 3 of 15, you'll see MIS data processing expenses, $118,213 out of the $262,000 plus budget was expended, or approximately 45%. Those are all yearly renewals of our wireless contracts, Vadar accounting, virtual town hall, so those are one-time expenses. And this would not cause any alarm at this point. The next one that is close is on page 5 of 15, and that is the harbor master. You will see the personal services 9.6%, and that is with the seasonal employees. They employ seasonal workers in June, July, and August. And we budget specifically for them. So they would throw, especially having it in the first month, they would throw the personal services line out of order. But there is nothing that I'm concerned about at this period. Page 6 of 15, Upper Cape Cod Regional. There was a bill or an expenditure paid $749,057. That is our quarterly assessment from them. Municipal maintenance and town buildings, you'll see on the personal services line, 9.3%. Usually this would be cause for alarm, but we had the director retire, and the accrued benefits were paid out of that line. We have an interim director, and the interim director, we will be posting for the position. However, what we usually do is hold it open until we've made up the salary. So until that salary's been made up from the accrued benefits, we can't fulfill it. That's another one of the issues we have by having essentially a budget that's very tight, if you will. We can't afford to budget for retirements and payouts. The next line you'll see is page 10 of 15, which is the debt principal and debt interest. These I'm not concerned with these because they are the payouts that normally we would expect. Those aren't paid monthly. We either have the annual interest or the annual debt payment, and they would be at different periods because we've borrowed at different times for these projects. So.
Derek,
Yes.
is it impossible to,
Tom, can you bring the microphone closer if the lights, and turn the light on, we'll make sure, hit the little push button. And then, you don't have to eat it, but you talk into the mic, thank you.
okay. Is it possible to, on some of these big numbers, to just calendarize them so that we understand the ebb and flow over the course of the year and can get a idea that if you're going to spend $140,000 in a particular month and it throws you way high on an annual basis, that we know that that's expected, 140,000, and we expected it to happen in that particular month. So it's not a, it's just, we just know when the cash is going to flow.
I understand what you're saying, but you know, these are manual sheets that we enter in. It's not our system producing these, so we.
What, are you
I
putting out
don't have the people.
It's a very cumbersome report is what you're talking about. But with this one, with a management or a letter in the front of it, what they call a management letter in the front of it explaining the large swings, that's probably the best we're going to hope for instead of an annualized. I think as this one goes along, you'll see that this is somewhat annualized. It's just broken down on a monthly basis.
I mean, I'd volunteer to go in and see how last year flowed on a percentage basis and put those percentages in here if that would make it work.
I got 'em on
It's
another
not a, it's not a big deal.
The previous
But
year,
the big numbers.
we could probably add the previous year to this, but what I would ask is that this committee decide what you want on the document and let me know, because it's okay. And I understand what you're saying because you're going to have some ebbs and flows, but they're also, one of the things we're going to have is the revenue report, but the revenue reports are going to be quarterly. The monthly revenue reports don't make any sense realistically because we're not collecting every month. There's some months you're going to have much more. It's when the excise bills, when your real estate taxes are due. So, you know, you could go, you could get the collections in the beginning, look great, and then by the third month, everybody's having a panic attack because you haven't collected any more revenue, but it's an artificial look. So, I know what you're probably thinking about those as well, so we can see what the committee would want for those numbers.
They manually enter it into what, an Excel sheet or?
Yeah, this is a simple Excel spreadsheet here, and we'll have some of the simple calculations. So you'd see the unobligated balance. If you can see at the top, it's just simply the different columns minus one another. But we physically have to enter in our expenditures. It will not post to this. So
Okay.
taking the town accountant doing that, and then myself going through here and looking at the numbers, double checking them, and then writing a report for it.
Want me to shut up? No. Could you send us the Excel spreadsheet? Just send it to us?
We have to be careful here, and the reason, we can discuss what we want to see as a committee, but we need to decide what we, I don't want to get to the point that we're putting so much emphasis on the financial reporting to us that it takes away from operating the town. So we need to have the discussion of what we want to see, and that's more of a philosophical issue from our standpoint. I know that with the recap report on the front and the highlighted items, that's a little easier for the whole group to understand than it is to start annualizing, and it's a little more complicated, and it takes a little more thought process, but we can discuss it. So let's move on though.
The next item would be on page 13 of 15, which is retirement in Liuna. Retirement we pay in one lump sum and save approximately, I believe it's $40,000 by prepaying it. So you would see that's why we've paid out the full amount for the retirement, $2,841,268. Liuna is the Laborers International Union pension. It's what certain employees that are in unions have. The clerical, I don't think the steel workers, but municipal maintenance laborers, water pollution control laborers, they have a pension system on top of the normal where by hour X amount of dollars is placed into it, and per the contracts the town pays into those as well. So this is one that I expect to go up over the next few years because they have what's called preferred and default system that we're finally trying to get our fingers on. This had so much money in one time, this pension system that's run out of Washington for the laborers, that they were letting new people in, and it was great. They loved it. However, when the pension reform hit, and then when they started losing value from the downturn in the economy, they no longer had the calculations to fund their obligations. So we had two options. One was to go preferred or one to go deferred. Default, excuse me. Preferred or default. Default would cost us 8 cents per hour per employee, and that would increase by 8 cents every 5 years, for 5 years. And the employees would lose most of their pension. Preferred cost 10 cents, and they were kept at the same level of their pensions. So this became an item that was bargained through the contracts. And although it's $32,500 is a good sum of money, I believe the difference between the preferred and the default would be a few $1,000s every year. And at some point you look beyond just the dollars and cents, and it's a morale issue. So, and those are.
What's the split between the town and the employee?
It's going to depend by the unions. I would have to look and pull it out of the contracts to give you, because some unions have a higher amount, some unions have a lower amount, depending on what they've negotiated.
other questions? Yes, Mr. Trudeau?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to check your microphone there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Derek, the pension that we're paying in is primarily going to the Plymouth County retirement system.
That's the large lump sum of millions.
Last I knew, our Get Well program had gone from 2025 to 2033. Is that 2033 still an accurate number?
Well, that's where they've pushed it out to, but it will, my understanding, they'll probably continue pushing these out. I'm going to the next meeting of the Plymouth County to see what their plans are. There's a lot of different plans out there. There's some plans to start borrowing for the full obligation and assessing the towns on top of that. That's the one that scares me, because if we do that, we could probably expect a $500,000 increase next year easily, above the normal increase.
Just as a background for the new members, when I first joined 6 years ago, we had a Get Well plan to pay up what we owed to Plymouth County retirement system, and that was to be paid off in 2025. Now, when I mentioned 2033, 6 years later, you can see that we've lost 2 years in our Get Well program over a period of 6 years. And that's because they're projecting an 8-something% return and producing far less than that. It's an area you're going to have to watch, because it's somewhat out of control. Yet on the other hand, if Plymouth County was to be absolutely candid and tell us what the rate of return was, it would destroy virtually every town's budget in the Plymouth County retirement system, because they would have to ante up an incredibly large sum. And I don't know, but I know Derek has a gasp on that. But be aware that we are sliding behind every year on this Plymouth County retirement system, and then you at some point need to bring in the chairman and get by the music and the tinsel and get down to the real numbers, because to lose 2 years or gain, either way you want to look at it, over 6 years, you've lost 2 years worth of gains. Unless this market really turns around and they produce incredible returns year after year, we're just going to continue to slide under. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I was just going to clarify that and make the analogy, and we'll get further into this issue as the year goes along, because this is something that we need to watch and track. But it's very similar to spreading out your mortgage. We could have paid it off in the balance, that's obligated balance, in 2025, I think is what Mr. Trudell was saying. But now, because those numbers weren't realistic and we would have had to pay a higher assessment every year that wasn't realistic for us to budget, rather than pay a higher amount every year, we can let it go further and further into the future. This is what we refer to as kicking the can down the road. But the reality is we don't have the money to bring it forward now. The other problem that we're facing is this assessment, as David said, is based on an 8.5%, or I think it's down to 8.25% this year, rate of return. Well, then this market, that hasn't been realistic. So we've had a few bad years. We had some good years. So we do need to, I think as a project this year, the FinCom will look at that more closely to see where we're going with that.
No, that would be all for this. And again, there will be a separate report for the water pollution control and the EMS as well. The reason for that is the water pollution control is an enterprise fund, and these are the general fund costs, and the EMS is an offset receipt as well.
So I have a few things. First off, thank you. It is August 14th, and we're looking at July numbers. That's exceptional considering the past history. So we want to thank you for that. The other thing is, can we expect this to happen on a monthly basis around the same time?
Yeah, I think instead of playing catch up, like we've always said, if you're doing it, it's going to work. We've also hired with the town accountant's office a consultant to work on a couple of the projects that we really need, such as the health insurance trust and putting together a whole reconciliation of that, as well as now we'll have a document that we can use every month, and also doing some of the issues that we need for setting the tax rate, such as the recap. It's hard for the departments that we have now to pay the bills, to work on setting the tax rate, so that if people are wondering why we're bringing in consultants, it's, if we can get anything for a cheaper cost and bring people in, we're doing it.
So does this dialogue help you? Is this useful for you?
For meeting here with everyone?
Right, from the finance committee.
Well, I get to, obviously I have concerns about things when I look at the budget. That's why, like everybody else, I have the Maylocks in my desk and such. But it does. I like to see, I have to know what people are concerned most about. If it may be, I could think that that SERPED was nothing I would ever think about, and that could cause somebody to read it and be very nervous. So it helps me to pinpoint where the issues are, but also this report forces me to sit down and see month to month where we're going. It's what I did as the financial analyst, but it's easy to get lost in the day-to-day of people just coming by the office, whether it's a complaint, whether it's a department head worried, whether it's a union issue or an HR issue. So for me, it is helpful, and I go through. This isn't a pat on the back. I asked Matt Underhill. I said, Matt, I can't get into Vadar. He said, oh, we just switched it up. I forgot. You go into the system as the town administrator. I said, yeah. He goes, yeah, we haven't had that before, so I forgot. So for me, I like being able to go in the system and actually see it. So.
Kind of a hands-on guy, aren't you? So in the future, what I'd like, and we will probably have the discussion at the next meeting about the format, but I'm okay with the format. Right now, I think it could change, but the fact that we're getting them a month after they occur is a major boost for the finance committee. We did not have that. I don't think there's a member on here that's been here any period of time that can say that we got the numbers a month after they occurred. Anyone? We'd be lying. So, all right. Well, the second thing is if we could get these before the meeting electronically with the cover letter, so that it'll stop a lot of the questions. And I believe Mrs. Catulli's right. We just need to let you go through the report and then ask our questions as we go along. So thank you for that.
Can I just want to?
Yes, Ms. Catulli.
I just want to say that, first off, I mean, to me, this report is simple, easy to read. You don't have to be, a rocket science just to figure this out. I don't really see a usefulness of having a prior year column in here personally, because to me that's ancient history and has nothing to do with the present budget. If you can't stick with the budget that's there, knowing what the prior year doesn't mean anything to me. So I think that's just a little cumbersome. From somebody who's been here for the past 6 years and has had endless discussions about reports, I think going back to square one and keeping it simple is really where we need to be, because, like I said, not everybody here, completely understands all these graphs and numbers and percentages, et cetera, and that, to me, makes it a lot simpler. It is nice to know that, that they're up-to-date monthly numbers, and I just hope that trend stays going, because there have been launch-offs before in the past few years where it started out well, but then, things got busy and they got backlogged, and they weren't keeping up with it. And I think that's what happened over time, was we would start out getting them monthly, and then, 3 months down the line, and they were so backlogged that the numbers weren't up to date. So I just hope that trends well on throughout the year, so we can really see, not just the finance committee, but yourself and the board of selectmen, if there's going to be a problem area, that it's right out there in black and white, and we can, as a team, three members or 3 sets here, work on it together. And that's really the goal that the finance committee wanted right from the beginning. So, thank you.
On to the next. And by the way, I like the display screen over here. It's going to be a good thing, except for the fact that the members over here are probably gonna have to turn around to see it. We'll work on that.
I think it's gonna be, I'll try and see how we convert that into, that's really our print setup for it, so maybe I can convert to print and view. Let's see. Yeah, I can zoom in on. So let's see where we're at for 100 on it. There we go. Look at that. Can't see anything.
We can work that out. Okay, we gotta move this along. Quit playing with the Excel spreadsheet.
For I have it. I have enough more. All right, for the town administrator's report, the other item that we will have by next week is the revenues, the year-end revenues from FY13, the year-end expenditures from FY13. We're still working with the school system to manage some of the journal entries and such. So once that's through, I'll be able to submit those so everybody can see where we ended on the year end. I'm actually going to be, I started looking at the revenue report, and I'm happy about some items because, and this is going to sound illogical to you, some of the revenues for FY13 were less than FY12 and some of the fines and such. I receive emails all the time, why aren't we budgeting what we expended, what we had for revenue the previous year? We all know on some of them you'll have certain outliers that are not going to happen year in, year out. The building of Walmart, the building of the new hotel. So that's why people need to understand we're not going to budget the previous year's number because those aren't the right numbers. I do expect for FY14 a larger uptick because we've changed a lot of the fee structure, inspectional services. We're going to continue to work on the harbor master, but some of the fees in, I believe there was one item, I believe the Board of Health changed some of theirs too, but I can't remember right now. But that's, it'll be interesting to go through. It looks like right now our collections for taxes, simple taxes was 98%, which is I believe 2% higher than our usual. So I believe a lot of that has to do with Mr. Foster, aggressively going after the revenues for the taxes and such.
Did you present the 5-year plan to the Board of Selectmen yet?
I have not presented that yet.
Are you going to continue to tweak it? Because obviously the number you gave us were very rudimentary when you
Right.
consider that. But so you're going to continue to tweak it or update it? Would that be something that we would see on a?
I think what I do is move forward with the current report. I've been thinking about it. I met with my department heads last Thursday to start the FY15 budget process to really see what I asked them for what their true needs are to run the department, and that's including extra staff. And it's for them it's a little disheartening because they know they're never going to get that, so I'm asking them to sort of chase the windmill, if you will. But we really need to know what these departments need to run as a community and to understand it. And I think so why I'm going in that direction is maybe in December when we've gone through everything, we see what some of the needs really are. We would add that to the 5-year plan, and the important aspect of that is really going to be the school's needs as well. So. I don't even know if what I spoke to Mr. Chair about was, and you're probably going to get sick of it sometime, tell me to quit whining, but it's we don't often have the staff, and we're looking into interns and such to do true studies and to take it upon to really look into something. Last night, the ambulance increased their rates. We have an expected increase in the budget, about 200 revenues, excuse me, $230 to $250,000. But last year, Bourne purchased an ambulance with the cost they did in mutual aid to us. So you're talking about $230,000 as well. So what I'm asking the finance committee is to come together or create a subcommittee to examine if we brought additional staff on, would it help the ambulance service? Now we're picking up those calls as well instead of going in and having Bourne pick them up, or we're going into more mutual aid calls and we're bringing those revenues in. And it's not necessarily hiring more full-time people. Could be a mixture of full-time, some on-call people as well. But I really would ask that the finance committee work with the EMS to put together a report on it and see if it's truly feasible.
Just a few comments. First off, we don't have subcommittees. We have a research team
Okay.
that's going to probably handle this. And I have a couple of guys in mind for it already that obviously have that mentality, that ability to do a pro forma. Hold on a minute, Tom. And without getting too heavy into parameters, the reason is we have a serious amount of overtime that goes on now because of the way the shifts run. But at the same time, just the fact that Bourne bought an ambulance with the money they made off Wareham because our ambulance wasn't operated should tell you just about everything you need to know about that. But I'll take volunteers, and maybe we can talk about this or have them meet with Derek. But I wouldn't want more than 2 people on this team. Not that I'm looking at you or Tom, but would you guys be interested in something like this? Sure. Okay, then we'll go in that direction.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. And just a little tip. They're a little gun shy because they hear a lot of times that we're looking into maybe moving them somewhere else, and that's not what this is. So don't be surprised if they're a little nervous at first.
These guys are professionals. They'll do a great job
Yeah.
with it.
Thank you. We've had the ambulance. We've talked about the budgets, and as I've said, I'm working with my department heads to start the FY15 budget process now, instead of usually what happens is there's a budget message that goes out in October and we get the input back in November. So we're truly starting now to see what's really what the departments need. Part of that as well is we're also requesting the true revenues from each department from FY13. Although you're essentially an entire fiscal year behind when you're considering the FY15 budget, it's the only real look that you have from the revenues of those departments. And it's interesting for people to see, if you keep on cutting from some departments, are you now losing revenue for the town? And actually it's ineffective.
That it for you?
I do.
We need you for a couple of discussions. One,
Okay.
look, can we skip over the management letter for just a minute to talk about town meeting? Is that okay with everyone?
Can I bounce back to something? Because it's
Oh,
just
please
flashing
bounce
through my
back.
mind. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to bounce back to this ambulance thing just for a second. What is it that you're asking these 2 gentlemen to do? To come up with a plan, or to listen to what the director, or the ideas that the director has as to a way to expand the service to make a bigger profit? Is this what we're looking at?
I guess the easiest way to call it is take what the town administrator and the EMS director said as far as how they're going to utilize, I guess the best way to put it is people to generate more revenue in this town. It's a pro forma. They're trying to take the ideas and build a spreadsheet, if you will, that says, okay, if we do this, this is what comes out. If we do this, this is what comes out. That's what we're asking them to do.
Okay. I'm just a was just a little confused. I mean, I'm
I
not
can-
sure. I'm not sure that,
Go ahead.
I mean, I don't know that, I mean, what did you call it? You didn't call it a subcommittee. What did you call it?
I call it a research team.
A research team, okay. I'm not sure.
Well, first, if it's a subcommittee, then they have to post meetings, and it's not as effective as going out and doing the actual research and then coming back and presenting the findings. But I think this actually answers a question that I'd had earlier. We asked, does the EMS actually make money? And that's a question. It seems to, it appears to, but we don't have all the true costs. We don't know what the status of the ambulance, if it's out, what we're losing. So it's really just trying to get a handle on what are we missing by not having another ambulance? Or if we have another one in service, can we make more money? Anecdotally, it seems to make sense. If we didn't have an ambulance and Bourne covered for us and Bourne made that money, then if we'd had the ambulance, we would make the money. That, on the surface, makes a lot of sense. But we need to make sure that's really true, and it does make sense.
Okay.
So
I just
that's
didn't
really
want-
what we're going to be a backup to just look at
Right.
those numbers.
I just wasn't, I mean, I don't feel like we as the FinCom need to step in and make a plan for them. They need to give us the plan.
And we need to look at the numbers
with an
behind
open
it.
mind. You
Yeah.
know, we can tweak it, give our suggestions back, but it's certainly not our place to come up with the plan. That was my only, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there is an individual who has extensive experience in this area, and he is part of the capital planning. He's a retired fire chief out of, I believe it's Bourne. And someone who would have an inside track on ideas and how it was done in other areas to perhaps help your research team get a better answer. So they should approach the chairman of the capital planning.
Okay, thank you. Dom?
Thank you. Derek, through you to Derek, how long did Bourne cover for us? Just rough.
It wouldn't be, I wouldn't be able to tell you, 'cause it's really
2
on the
months,
numbers.
5 months, 3 months?
No, mutual aid means at any time, so even if one of our ambulances is on a call, not out of service or
Okay.
anything like that, they'll come in for mutual aid. We do it for Marion and Rochester as well, and we'll even do it for Bourne. But there's been times we've lost our ambulances for an entire weekend, and it's a scary prospect. We've had to borrow Marion's ambulance, I remember, over one weekend to have ours running. But it's never been a time or a period of months that we've been down and inactive.
And you're telling me just in the infrequency that we were able to cover or make all our calls, Bourne bought an ambulance, a $200,000-$300,000 vehicle.
Correct.
Well,
That's the
That's a tremendous-
anecdotal evidence that came back to me.
that's a tremendous amount of money, so something's either, you know, it deserves looking into. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? I want to take the management letter out of order and just talk about town meeting, because it's a brief discussion. We had a meeting with several people, I believe, Selectman Slavin, Titlebaum, Vice Chair Donahue, the town administrator, the school superintendent, the moderator, town clerk, town council were in a meeting talking a little bit about the process for town meeting and how we could improve it. And a couple of things that came out of there, and I spoke earlier with Mrs. Catulli about this, is one of the things that has been a problem in the past is the town clerk has to go back to the tape and take exactly what motion was made, word for word, and put that on the recorded one. So if you make an error, which I, as a southern man, keep saying and or whatever it is I do, then she has to put that in there. And sometimes it causes problems with the motion. And one of the discussions I wanted to have briefly was I had a brief conversation with Vice Chair, what can I call you, Mrs. Donahue for short? I can't call you Marilyn. Okay, we had a conversation with Marilyn, and we talked about this, and I think what I'd like to see is one person reading all the motions for the committee. We always fumble through papers. We look for names to say, oh my gosh, this is Larry's, or this is Tom. Well, this is Dom's, and Dom's in the bathroom, just using you as an example, and somebody else has to read it. So we end up fumbling around a lot. So what I would like to do is propose that one person read the motions. I'll get into being prepared to read the motions, but first I think that's something we need to talk about. Now that doesn't mean that the advice that we give that's underneath the article is read by them as well. That's something that could be read individually, but the motion itself needs to be read by one person on this committee. And since Mrs. Catulli is the clerk, we can talk about it, but I would like it to be her. Any objections to that? Okay, that was the start. The other thing we talked about was preparing the motions. And again, I think we had a little discussion at our last meeting about preparing the motions, and there was some concern there. The motions are basically prepared when the article's submitted. We have to tweak it, and then we will submit it to the town council and the town moderator. They'll be in the process all along, but it's more or less, it's coming through us first instead of coming to us last. That's what's happening, which gives us a better chance to understand the motion and before it gets to town meeting, not the day of town meeting. We're handed the motions as it is now, the day of, and sometimes the day before if they're really feeling generous. And then we have to figure out what the motion says, and we figure out, and if there's a shortcut, we don't know it because we've only had it for a day. So this way we'll have the motions early, and we'll be able to prepare early, and then we'll have one person reading the motions, so therefore we can prepare them as well. Any discussion or talk on this?
The explanation or the point of view that you got the motion and then you have the motion and then you have the sort of explaining the motion. That's all going to be read at the same time initially, or is it going to be the motion and then after they're asked how the committee voted on it, there'll be an explanation of what the position, what the motion's about?
All the motions will be read by one person.
Yeah.
The advice, which we write up and submit to Kelly, and it's in the book, that will be read by individuals. We'll assign articles for that to happen. I just want to get one person reading the motions. It's critical because it goes to the state and it has to be done correctly. And so I just wanted one person. That way they can't blame it on all of us. We can only blame it on one person. So.
At what point in the sequence is the explanation presented?
I think we're going to clarify that with the town moderator before. We also talked about having a little bit more of a dress rehearsal before town meetings so that we get up there. One of the problems we have with the lottery system is everyone's scrambling to figure out where we're at. But if we have a dress rehearsal and we're a little bit more on it, so that will come up later on as it gets closer to town meeting.
There's several other little things that have come out of it, but nothing big to report at this point, other than we need to know that it's 2 days, the last day to post in the public place of each precinct the notice of intention of the Board of Selectmen to call a fall town meeting. That happens on Friday the 16th. The last day to submit articles will be on the 13th. So that means over the next month we will probably be involved to a certain extent with the Board of Selectmen, because I think the goal this year is for them to review the articles. I know this sounds really forward thinking, but they're going to review the articles before they vote on whether they submit them to the warrant. We're going to put the cart back behind the horse this time. So that's going to happen, and we'll probably also, that wasn't nice, I apologize. So we're also going to get an opportunity to be involved in that process, as well as the articles come into I believe they come into the town moderator or the town administrator, we will see the articles as they come in so that we can begin working on them as well. If there's a chance for us to have joint meetings to have a proponent of an article come before us, we may do that as well, if that's okay with everybody on the committee. Saves time.
I think one of the confusing things that we're changing, and I don't think that this committee saw it. We would get the articles in, put them in the warrant, and then you'd update it, put the next one in the warrant, then you'd jumble them around, somebody would want to change the language, and you had this document that became a beast in and of itself. So we're not putting together the warrant until it's ready to be posted, until it's closed. We're taking the articles in, and we'll look at them, but the actual warrant document itself isn't going to be put together till after it's officially, ready and closed on there. So poor Kelly doesn't get 5 different versions. And she's a very wonderful and kind person for not having killed us. So.
I think what Mr. Worthing was talking about when the moderator had said that she had thought that the FinCom should give their opinion, to insert their opinion up on stage and explain it in person. I think that's what you were getting at. Not so much the explanation. The explanation, we write the explanations to try to make it simpler for people who don't understand the legalese, okay? But when the motion is given, the proponent is supposed to have their 5 minutes to explain the article, okay? So we're not going to be explaining it again. But what the moderator had asked is that we do some sort of presentation after that proponent, that she's allowing the FinCom to give their view of why they chose or why they voted in such a way. So I think that's kind of what the chairman would, so we want to be prepared for that each individual will be able to give whatever our vote was and the view, whether it was if it was a majority and we were all in sync with it, then that would be one. But if it was a split, there would be a majority and then a minority view, that we needed to be more proactive in explaining our votes and our view.
And we could actually do that at the time when we give our vote, when she calls for the vote of the Board of Selectmen and the vote of the Finance Committee, and then we can go right into why we did that. Then the proponent can speak to the measure, and then we can back up the arguments that we had, but we've already put our opinion out there, because theoretically, we're the ones who've researched it and looked at it.
That's still being discussed how it's going to happen, but I think everybody's in agreement with what you're saying. We haven't in the past done a good job of reading our vote and then stating our opinion. We just haven't done that. And a lot of times I don't, it should have been done, maybe it shouldn't have been done, but this time it will be done. It just, one person, because it has to be verbatim on the motion, but on the other one, we can read from there, or we can state our opinion from that. The other thing is, most of the articles that are not citizens petition articles, we will probably be speaking on, unless it's something that's, if it's a town committee, we may defer to them as well. But if it's financial in nature, it'll probably be either Mr. Sullivan or someone on this committee speaking to it, or a combination of. All right. That's that. Any other statements, comments?
The intention then is that we will read the motion, and when asked by the town moderator, we will make a recommendation to the town meeting. Based upon our vote. Right. Understand.
Okay. What else? Let's move on to the management letter and report. Do you have yours with you?
I do. Should I have said no?
To speak to this? Sorry.
Well, I was wondering if, what,
I think the majority of the committee probably focused on the management letter. Is that correct? So if you want to give us a brief overview of your take on the management letter, how it compares to prior years, what has happened since then, just to give us an overview. Thank you.
yeah, I think we had Craig Peacock, who's one of the team from Powers and Sullivan, come in and speak to the Board of Selectmen. And basically what's happened in the past is from I'd say, I believe it's fiscal years '09 and '10, we were in a catch-up mode for many years, trying to basically make up for a whole lot of issues coming out of those fiscal years. And it's where you're starting to hear my mantra of it's better to be on top of it than catching up. We were trying to figure out why there was large variances in what our accounting system had, why the linkage issues. Right? So basically, you were trying to repair and run a department, and we turned over, I believe, 3 town accountants in approximately an 18-month period. So during that, we had our first, I believe, unqualified opinion that Mr. McDonald nearly blew his top on the one.
I was younger and unprofessional.
You know, we've now established, and I think I'm trying to get to it, there's two things that we have going for us now. One is what we've always had, the treasurer collector, John Foster, who upon the 19th of August, 60 days after town meeting, will be the finance director. Yeah, that's when his position is upgraded by the charter. His department is what kept the town able to set the tax rate, and our auditors and the Department of Revenue trusting in enough of the numbers that we had to even issue an audit. We literally had an unauditable year. And this is light years beyond that, but it's not really what you want to see. This is much better, but by any means, this is, in most towns, it wouldn't be anything to crow about. You want to get the issues that you don't want to see the same issues coming in, year out. See, as noted in previous audits, that's one of the issues. We know there'll be some that we'll see. There's some of them with the accrual times and such from Harper's payroll. That's an issue that we cannot resolve with Harper. And I understand Powers and Sullivan. They should note it because it's a weakness, but it's something that we are not able to resolve at this time, and we're probably going to have to look into another type of payroll company. That also stems, those issues of not being able to really track, is that we have 11 unions on the town side. And so you have 11 different contracts with 11 different dates of when they receive their steps, their benefits, who receives an extra day because they've been there for 10 years. So nothing is truly uniform. So trying to really account for that in an automated system, Harper's isn't able to do it, but will still be written up for that. The monthly reconciliations with the new town accountant, she and the treasurer collectors have been working on the monthly reconciliations. Powers and Sullivan came in to look at some of the items, and I know that Mr. Peacock was much happier with what he saw, because it wasn't that they were going back to, or the accounting office was going back to July to start the monthly reconciliations when you were coming in March or April. So those are some of the items that are moving forward.
How current are the monthly reconciliations?
We're done with FY13 for the monthly reconciliations.
thank
you. Those are some of the big items. I think there'll still be things that are carried forward, but I have a very positive outlook of where it's going, and I would be shocked if there was a lot more of the issues. The 53G accounts, the accounting office, the treasurer collector, and the planning sat down to reconcile all those, work it out. I believe there was still some issues at the end of it because what was agreed upon, then there were some changes with some monies that were paid out, and I think it should have been tracked better. I believe that's one of the offices, and we're working with them on it. So there's there's a lot of issues here that I think we're doing a lot better on that will be falling off. Develop the written disaster recovery procedures. We're working with Lieutenant Walsek, and I think we really need to not just have the procedures, but change some of the items. In Springfield, they've basically created a hub for information, and it was paid for by a state grant and put together with state grant funds, and it's operated as such. But in order for us to use it, they want to charge us a lot of money to do it. We're saying, you're paid through grants. Why should we pay into it as well? So, I believe there will be, this is sort of an overarching talk about it, so I'm sure there'll be more questions, but there's a lot of items that were the true big material weaknesses. As I've said, we currently have the consultant working on the health insurance trust for the reconciliation. That is a major concern of mine, yours, the Board of Selectmen, the Department of Revenue, and our auditors. So I'm happy to see what's going to come out of that. We also know that we're truly budgeting what group benefit strategies our hired consultant has told us the cost is going to be. We're budgeting for the dental as well, which hasn't been budgeted in the past. So I think we're doing much better on that. And when we talked about the health insurance trust, I'd made the recommendation that in order to truly balance out, we would have to give a holiday to the employees, because in order for us to put several million in, it's not going to work. But we didn't do the employees' health holiday, because until I see really where it is, I just don't feel comfortable doing anything along those lines. And that some of the employees, in working with them, didn't want the holiday. They wanted the money set aside to do the buy-in for the Mayflower Group, which is the Plymouth County health insurance. So there's a lot of us working together to resolve long-standing issues. I'd love to see the health insurance trust to not be one, and go into something like the Plymouth County system or the Mayflower Group, because you shouldn't have a town administrator that can sit there and make a decision on how much we're going to fund in there, whether it's myself or a future town administrator. And it's something that has the potential to really hurt the town. So.
No, I don't want to open that can of worms.
You go ahead and I'll finish the can of worms for you.
Just with regard to the health insurance trust, will that help with personnel, with staffing issues as well, if we're in the Mayflower, the Plymouth County system? I don't know how much time, energy costs for the accounting office, you, school department. Will it be easier that way? Less personnel, less personal hours, I guess I'm saying.
I don't think it will truly let us be able to move personnel or put more of the personnel into other departments or areas, because we're still going to have some of the bills coming through and such. We'll still see Pilgrim and Harvard Pilgrim and Blue Cross Blue Shield, but we're a town that doesn't have a lot of money, and if that builds up again to a surplus, it's very tempting to float another year on it. So it's sort of keep the wine out of my hands if I've got an issue with it. So.
Okay.
I guess I just want clarification on this. When you talk about going back to going to Plymouth County or Mayflower, whatever it is you're discussing there, I need to understand this, because I was on the FinCom when we came out of a Plymouth County health plan and went to being a private funded and having our own healthcare system. And supposedly, this was supposed to save us money by managing our own healthcare. And my understanding was that being in a larger plan with, several, different areas of Plymouth County, population is higher, et cetera, that we were actually paying higher premiums here in Wareham for communities elsewhere, and that we were, the benefit, what they sold us at that point was that we were better off keeping it in our own community and funding our own. And I just worry about getting back into that plan. What is the reason for saying, are we going to really save money by getting back into a bigger plan? Because that wasn't what I was told 5 years ago, so I'm kind of...
And the fun thing about health insurance is it changes. And some years you're having the greatest, and you have people, nobody has long-term illnesses, no cancers, nobody has any sort of issues, and you're saving money, and it looks wonderful. Last year was a disaster. And we were lucky enough that we did not lucky, we smartly did the stop-loss insurance. And after paying into it, I believe $290,000, we received $440,000 back on it. Our stop loss is increasing, our returns are increasing for every year, and we've gone through on the bottom, we're going back up the crest. So we have, if you looked at our population of employees, you would see we have a substantially older population of employees, and not to be rude, but that's where the costs are, and that's where we're headed. So I would say group benefit strategies, as we've kept on a certain level, 6.7 million this year. You're probably looking at an increase to about 6 to 7% if it was a really wonderful year, so about 7.2. The next year, 6, 7. Mayflower hasn't changed their rates in 3 years.
I just want to make a statement on that. That sounds great, and like I said, I've heard this before, and I understand what you're going, but not everybody does. And these are the questions that get asked of us when we're out and about and said, oh, we hear this, what's the story? So at some point, it's not our decision, you're the town administrator, you have to work with the employees. But at some point, making that understandable to us in some sort of presentation that we can say to the people that come and ask us, this is why that decision was made, would be extremely helpful. Thanks.
I would think probably one of the benefits would be to bring two people together. One is GBS, the Group Benefit Strategies, because they work with Plymouth County or the Mayflower as well. So they don't have, realistically, they don't have a dog in the fight. If we go to Mayflower, they still have the contract. If they stay with us, they still have the contract. Have them in and have Plymouth County in as well to speak about it. And it really is the Mayflower Group. I call it Plymouth County because that's what it used to be called. So it depends on who you're talking to as to which way it's going to be called.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, now you get me. If you looked at this report without looking at the 2011 report, it's a disaster.
Right.
However, if you look at this in context of the 2011, and if you want to go back and play all the way back to 2009, we're light years ahead of where we were. I've always concentrated on certain things, and one of the things we spoke about at Springtown meeting was the need to get our financial house in order. And this is part of the process for us, because as good as this looks, there are certain areas, especially that need to be handled in a timely fashion. One of the things that continues to reoccur is the ambulance receivables and the police receivables. Those are two items that it says there's no current plan in place for. And to me, you have some receivables that are over 180 days old, and that's a significant sum of money. So that, from a standpoint of, I don't know if it's an easy fix, but it is something that when it gets 180 days old, if you don't have a plan in place, by the next time you turn around, it's even older. Yeah. So it's the little things like that drive me nuts. But I will say this, out of a 13-page management letter, or whatever it is, actually it's 19 or 21, 7 of it's dedicated to the healthcare insurance trust fund, whatever, healthcare, something like that, health insurance trust. So what that tells me is that hopefully at this point we've got our percentages correct and we're reconciling that in a timely fashion so that that percentage doesn't get out of whack like it has in the past.
Yeah, I would say, I know for a fact that for FY13, our percentages are going to be off because we brought the 1.289 in to make sure that we boosted it up, but we didn't do the second part of that, which is to either do a holiday for the employees and such, because I had a true fear for last year that even with the 1.289, we were treading very, very heavily with the way things were going. It's historically we've run about 92 to 93% our run rates, and at one point during FY13 we were at 102%. I didn't feel the 5.7 million was enough for the budgeted amount, so I would say we're going to see there's health insurance will still from the FY13 audit be an issue and percentage-wise, but I expect, especially because I expect to get this audit sooner the next audit sooner in this fiscal year, that we will be able to resolve the issues. So,
But you've got a corrective plan in place
yeah.
for the healthcare trust, so this
Correct.
is not going to, obviously, the issue you're talking about is something that we can't go back and fix,
Right.
but there is one in 2014, which will show up under, current situation or
Right.
current plan, so that's fine.
Yeah, believe it or not, one of the main cure-alls is to listen to our paid consultants and budget the amount that they suggest. So,
Even private companies have this argument about self-insured versus
Yeah.
going to an outside source. It's a huge thing with us every year, because we can get the young man that comes in a nice suit and a tie and explain to us how self-insured is going to save us all this money, but we also have an aging workforce as well. And if you look at last year's, you saw that huge swing of almost $800,000 that actually hit. So you know that's a factor in there, so you have to plan that, because once you switch, it's not so easy to go back, and as you can see, 5 years later, now you're discussing it. So I agree, this is something that has to be done right and done using the proper resources to get it done.
yeah. And I also believe last year we should see a spike around the time we started speaking with the unions and moving towards potentially the GIC, because before that happened, or a change in the deductibles and such. Obviously, if you're smart, you'd want to get everything in before that happens. So.
Thank you, Larry. Through you to Derek. Derek, but when we started self-insurance, were those years, did the town actually save money? I'm not saying every year now. If you go back historically, because I've been on for a while, it was the right decision for years.
For a few years, and I don't have the comparison to what Mayflower paid out, but our run rates were like I said, 92, 93%. I think one of the years had even been 89, but it's still, when you're self-insured, even with the stop loss, you're still, our stop loss only starts at $100,000. So once the claim reaches $100,000, that's when we get the rest of the money back. So if you're understanding, we received $440,000 back, you know that we had a bunch hit at least the $100,000 level. So it's a true gamble. You have multiple illnesses, multiple people hitting the high level mark, and you're in trouble. And it's not just our employees. It's children, it's significant others, it's all the people covered. So it's not, I think we've got 653 individual and family plans. That's not the amount of people covered. So those are the actual plans.
I understand that, and I understand what you're saying, but we got out of Plymouth for that, the reason of the increases, correct? We were insured with Plymouth before we went self-insured, correct?
I think it wasn't the increases of Plymouth, it was that you'd think that you can do better being self-insured, that Plymouth had, you're saying, well, you have people in, let's say Rochester, for example. Well, Rochester really had a lot of people last year, so, yeah, even though you guys did great, Rochester's going to hit you, so you're going to go up 1%, you're going to go up 2%, 6, 10, whatever it was. But when you're in a much smaller group, you can't absorb the hits as well with multiple.
Wait, can we just cap this? We're gonna have this discussion when we start talking healthcare insurance. We're really talking about the audit at this point, and we can move in that, I know we'll move in that direction when we get to that point. 'Cause I'm sure that's gonna come up to us sooner or later, correct?
Okay.
So any more questions on the audit? Yes, ma'am.
As far as the police detail receivables go, and again, the ambulance that Larry spoke about, are there any policies and procedures that the department heads put in place to collect this money?
Yeah, the police receivables it should be an item on there, and you should be something written underneath there as to what the current status is. And if it wasn't for FY12, I know for a fact it's been resolved in FY13.
Yeah, it says no form of
doesn't say
reconciliation
that.
procedures
Okay.
were implemented during 2012. So in 2013, they've collected now?
Yeah, what they've done is they won't even, a lot of the people have to prepay if they've ever had an issue with them, even if it's a large company. We had some words from NSTAR, I believe. They had to pay ahead of time. And they send out for not just, it's also for some of the fire calls as well. I believe
Yeah,
they
they have
received about
details.
$5,000 for the false alarms. We've started going after the companies for false alarms as well. So the ambulance has, I believe the last time I saw it was close to $600,000 to $700,000 in outstanding receivables. It has never been written off in 10 years, and we need a true idea of what to do with that. We've all talked about is whether you sell some of it to a collection agency. Can you do that? Is that good debt, bad debt? If you write it off, what's going to happen? So that's actually something we need to work with Powers and Sullivan on, see what some of the other communities are doing. 10 years is obviously, you have uncollectibles. We have a lot of people in this town that will flow in and flow out, and they're truly uncollectible for those, and we need to just write those off so it doesn't look like such an outstanding obligation. Because I believe, our true losses every year are between $50,000 to $60,000 of receivables that are uncollectible. But if you have $600,000 sitting out there, it looks like a disaster.
Well, it looks like there's $230,000 that is less than 180 days old. So right now, as of 2012, there was $230,000 that was uncollectible, or had not been collected.
Right.
So of that $230,000, how much, with the new policy and procedure, has been collected?
For all I know, on the $230,000, all of it could have been collected. I would not be able to tell you how much of that $230,000's been collected.
But he will get back to us at the next meeting
Yeah,
about that, correct?
Yeah, there's.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Mrs. Donahue.
And these are two minor points, because I think we covered all the major points, and I'm very happy to see the progression of this audit over other years. But toward the end, there's a discussion of the building leases that nobody seems to, has that been addressed?
Could you tell me what page that's on?
It's on page 20, that there was a lease renewal that's not a written contract.
Yeah, that got taken care of because they actually left.
Okay.
So
So that's,
that was the Workforce Improvement Board from New Bedford.
okay. And the comment after that was on the pilot payment in lieu of taxes that was just seemed to be used as a quick budget fix. Was that ever located?
I believe what that was we received $150,000 broken up in $50,000 segments from the Wareham Crossing.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, into the microphone or I'll get yelled at. I want to save that, our discussion about where we're meeting for the time being. I want to say, because I'm flipping through the pages right now because I want to save the discussion on the location of meetings just for a moment, because we can get Derek out here in a second. New business, unanticipated items. We understand there's been a resignation of the planner.
Correct, yes, the town planner has taken a position, which is a full-time position in Rainham as, I believe, Director of Planning and Development. I've accepted the resignation.
Was it a part-time position because we shared him, correct?
Correct.
What's-
Rochester had actually changed that. They were no longer going to share the position. Ideally, for a town this size, I think a full-time planner makes the most sense and will return in the long run. You may not see immediate dollars and cents coming back into the revenue, but I think it's something that we really need. I'm really trying to figure out where we would come up with it in October town meeting, but he's gone as of the 26th, and I want to post for a full-time position. So,
Okay.
and I have to try and figure out where we have money. We have $715 from Serped, so but there's a start. But I think we're shortchanging ourselves as a town. A good planner can really help it move forward to bring in more businesses and make it more economically viable. And we all know that that leads to increased revenues. So.
Okay. Is there anything else for Derek? Oh, yes, Mr. Worthing.
Could you put some numbers on that? What are they, what's the planner costs and what are they in this area?
I don't have it. I don't have that, but we were paying the gentleman for, I believe it was for 24 hours a week. We were paying $43,000. So. Yeah.
So it's a $100,000 job.
No, about a $75,000 to $80,000 job for truly.
But then you put the benefits on there. You get them a car
Yeah,
and all that jazz.
You know, if you really want to think about benefits, always multiply it by 38%. That's a high water mark, but it's a fair mark. So I think, don't be surprised if you see a posting for a full-time planner, and I'll find the money. It sounds like a terrible thing to say, but I think it's what we really need to do for the town.
Derek, it's not a terrible thing to say, it's the right thing to say.
Yeah.
It's when we did the budget last year, a lot of the department heads came to us, sat in front of us, and said, if I had the money, this is how I could generate more revenue for the town. If we were running accurately, we wouldn't be losing this much money. And it would become very, very frustrating. Became very, very frustrating for us to listen to department heads discuss how they could make more revenue for the town, how they could save us money if they had the appropriate staffing, the appropriate tools. And I think this is one of those staffing positions that really will benefit the town. And I agree with you, and if we get a real professional in there, we'll solve a lot of the pitfalls and potential lawsuits. It's critical to towns in our area to have someone who understands the laws and can put it all together, not just as a marketing gimmick, but actually real live planning to work with the conservation, the planning board, zoning. I think it's a critical position for where we stand right now in this town. Thank you.
And the GIS is part of that. And why we say that is, excuse me, if you want somebody that's coming into the town, you want to make it easy for them to know that what they're planning to build, whether it's a residential or commercial, and having a planner in there that's worked on this, put it all together, you essentially are making it easy for people to come in and say, I want to be in this town. And if you make it hard for them, even if you try and give them some tax revenue and such, they're not going to come in. So.
We're going to meet next week, so, and
So I better have ambulance answers.
yeah, I might have an ambulance answer next week. The other thing I was gonna tell you is, Guy Campina is going to come in next week and talk to us. So, and also we're gonna do the, outdoor nature classroom with the library as well. So I think you've already seen that.
I have seen that
All right,
presentation.
so we'll talk about that in a minute, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate the question.
Let's move on to the remote attendance policy. I know y'all, here we go again. I know everyone got this in their email. This is the policy that was put out by the Board of Selectmen. I know this is a growing trend, but the one great thing about this policy is it's up to the discretion of the chair. So at this point, I would open up the table for any discussion on the remote attendance policy. Yes? Mrs. Donnelly?
Mike, I have a question. This does not affect quorum? The actual quorum has to be physically present in the room.
Yes. Am I reading this to say that this also means, general participation, correct? Or is this just for board members of a board? I'm reading it as if also the general public can do citizen participation that way.
I think
Am
we're
I
just-
right or wrong?
I don't see it that way, but
Okay.
the reality is we're going to deal with it as a board. If the public wants to attend, they can. Yes, Mr. Slavin, would you like to? All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, that's not at all how this has been. I mean, I read this and I was like, I was totally confused by it. I guess I would have to look up this, this law here required by 940 CMR to totally understand it. So am I understanding that if you want to sit at home and do a call-in instead, as long as there's a quorum here, you could sit at home and participate by telephone over the loudspeaker, am I correct?
The Mass General law you're referring to has to do with what's committees all number one, and the certain requirements as well in the Mass General law. You need to look at the actual law. We just put the policy in place. It's up to the chairman of each committee whether they want to decide that option. There's certain committees that have people that sometimes go away for 1 or 2 months, and you still want to participate in the meetings as long as they're quorum.
Okay, all right, I guess you'd have to read up on the law to understand the quorum, is that the point?
Alan needs to come up to the table to address that if he's going to speak, because, microphone.
I'll speak loud enough, sure. The quorum is the same as quorum any other meeting. You have to physically be here.
What Mr. Slavin said was the quorum needs to be the same. The quorum has to be physically present.
Okay, so I'm just curious, Mr. Chairman, what is it you're asking of this committee? Are we going to accept this? Is that, in our own committee, is that what you're asking us for consideration?
I'm asking for discussion before we decide. I think we need to decide. It says up to the chairman, but I think we as a committee need to decide. I'm going to weigh in at the end of this, and then we can take a vote. But I would like for all the members to weigh in if they'd like.
I'll start. Oh, sorry. Oh, no, I had questions.
I think that that's a good yes. Remote attendance could be very helpful for people who are away for perhaps a prolonged period during the winter, or just can't attend a meeting and can still participate. They can't vote, but they can provide their input.
Will one be able to vote remotely? Or just participate in the meeting?
No, they will be able to vote.
Okay, thank you.
I wonder how we're going to do this. Is it your own telephone or someone's, on a computer? How is that gonna play out? What kind of physical,
I'll try to cover that towards the end. I'm not even gonna let you start with this one, so we'll cover that one towards the end.
I just think I mean, that's what's happening in the world. I think we ought to have some mock meetings and see how the thing works, rather than just say, yeah, let's do it. But I certainly think it's worth a test.
My opinion, confusion. I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Trudell?
Unless you can put a document, like we had tonight, in the hands of the remote participant, dealing with financial matters, how does one anticipate that they can be part of the discussion, and how can they make a meaningful vote unless they've got those documents or they're on a screen in front of them? Because otherwise, it's a waste of time.
Oh, sorry, you're already way there for going around. I'll handle that. Mr. Julie, you got anything else to add?
I understand that it's, it's modern technology, et cetera, but we're poor enough. Now we're gonna have to provide equipment so that people can phone in their vote or call in their vote. That's gonna be an interesting concept. I do understand that. I have heard in purposes where this, in certain committees where a committee member cannot miss so many meetings, I know, what is, yeah, three in a row. No, there's a certain committee, and I can't remember which one it is when, and I'll think about it. But anyway, it's one of here in town that is very important to do with planning and zoning and all that stuff. And I understood that, because if they're working on a project that can go 2 to 3 months worth of hearings, and they can't be there throughout those times, it could mean, either passing it or long delays and stuff. I do understand that. But I think we're getting way out there. As we personally are a small group. At times we have a difficulty getting a quorum, and I would really hate for it to be an excuse to not have to be here, unless there's a really good reason that you're on the opposite side of the country somewhere, that you can just call in your vote or monitor online. So that's how I feel.
Go ahead. One more time.
No, Bonnie took the words out of my mouth. I love you all dearly. If I'm around, I'll come visit with you. If I can't make it here, I really don't need to be calling in and seeing what you're up to. If I have important information, and I think it's right. I think I'm happy that the town is moving in this direction. I think it's the right thing to do. If I were home for long-term illness, maybe that would be a good thing for going off to Florida. But when I'm on vacation, I really don't miss you that much. So we can vote on it, but I don't,
No, we're
for
not
practical,
voting yet.
for practical purposes, I don't see it being that effective for us.
This policy made me break my pencil, just so you know. It's one thing when you listen to people talk about this, they're saying, oh, my company does it. We do this all the time. We do it all over the world. That's great, but we don't have the money to set up the proper equipment. As it stands, it will probably be a phone sat right here or something along. If you got a better plan, please let me know. Okay, well, we can do an iPad with Skype if they have Skype on the other side. If they don't,
We also normally have a computer sitting here, it's wireless,
and that's great.
projects up to the screen.
Yeah, and if they don't have that on the other side, you're back to a phone. So, but and I'm okay. I as a policy, it makes sense for some committees, and it may make sense because most of the work of the finance committee is not done at these meetings. Most of the work is done away from here at other meetings, like the meetings with all the department heads and other meetings along that sign. But as far as getting a document in front of someone, you send them an email. They've got the document in front of them. It's a capable thing. My personal feeling is I'm not wanting to try this at this point until we understand better the technology that is going to be needed, and if it becomes an issue to where we have to try it. I'm not saying I will not rule it out from my personal standpoint, because it is a policy that for some committees makes a lot more sense than it does the finance committee. Please. And then I'm going to send you back to your seat.
Yes, Dan. The rule that this is operating under, it states specifically, unless I read it wrong, that the chairman. Please use the mic. Can't can't, Bob, it goes in the wrong direction. Any better, Bob? It's a little too high. The way the article reads, it basically says the chairman of any board committee. It's not the committee itself. So the chairman can have a meeting where he says, we're going to allow this to happen. Next meeting, he can say no.
Okay.
The equipment really isn't an issue. The issue is whether you want it to, whether it works for your particular committee or not. This was just given as an option to all the boards and committees in Wareham, because a lot of them are advisory committees. It doesn't matter if you're an advisory committee, because you're an advisory committee. Whatever you have, whatever you decide on gets forwarded off to, say, the Board of Selectmen or whoever you're advising. They make the decision. It helps assist those committees that have a hard time keeping quorums because they are advisory committees. You're in a different situation. Board of Selectmen, I doubt very much we'll ever see it happen. You know, it can. I mean, we could have someone that's out, has to travel somewhere across country. There could be some discussions that he or she has important information, but overall, not really. But as far as information, I mean, you can take anything and get it to anybody instantly.
I don't know that we need to take a vote, and I know everybody's got their hands up, but really, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this.
It's your call, but I don't believe you're
As the
required to
chair-
have a vote at all.
Well, I don't think we need to take a vote tonight, but I think this needs to study more before I don't want to spend an entire evening talking about remote at this point. It's something that it's not presented itself. I've seen it on another committee where it was requested, or before it was a policy. I've seen it before where it was requested, and there was a lot of hemming and hawing, as we say in the South, over it. But the reality is, I don't think at this point it's something that we need to spend a lot of time on until it becomes an issue. And by then, hopefully, the selectmen, with their infinite wisdom, has worked out the technology for us to be able to use that. Would that be a fair statement?
The technology is available. The equipment may not be available to everybody. So again,
Okay.
it's a tool that we basically provided for the different boards, committees at their discretion.
Okay, then
I think that's the way it should be left.
I think let's just drop it for now. I don't think, is anybody that gung-ho or die-hard about it that it's a big deal? Not, except you, Tom.
I mean, if we're gonna go out and look at a department or something like that, and I can't be back here to give a report on what I found out at a department or interface with questions and things like that, you miss a month or you miss 3 weeks. Furthermore, if something goes on in the committee and I'm not here, then the meeting is a loss for me, and I'm sitting here in the fog because things have been discussed that I wasn't privy to or I wasn't aware of at the time that they happened because it wasn't here. And it ain't complicated.
Well, let me try another way.
You can do what you want to do, but I'm
Well,
I'm
I will.
encouraging you to step out.
Well, I guess my point in the whole thing is that you make it sound like a futile thing. If you're out of town and you can't reach it, we have DVDs of the meetings. It's on WCTV. All that information's available. We email you all the sheets.
But
So
I have information that I want to present to the committee, and I can't be here, and that means the whole information gets presented 3 weeks later, so the whole process bogs down.
this is why I don't want to spend a lot of time on it.
Slows down.
I'm not saying it's a bad idea or a good idea. I'm just saying at this point it's not something that it's reared its ugly head yet. When it does, then we'll make that decision at that time. Fair enough? Sure.
One quick question, I mean, it's something that we don't have to accept. They voted that we could do it. If we need to do it, we'll do it. We don't have to vote whether we're gonna use it or we're not gonna do it. All the selectmen said is, we can. So leave it at that, put it in the back burner.
I've
We
left
can if we
it
need
at that, so we'll move on to the next thing. The location of our meetings. I don't know how comfortable people are tonight, but I wanted to get kind of a feel for how you feel about meeting in the selectmen's room. Has it gone okay according to, has it met your expectations? Is it something you feel we should continue to do, or is it something, should we move back downstairs to our old room?
I prefer to do it in my living room.
Okay. And then that policy's gonna rear its ugly head.
Are we actually live, or are we still being taped?
No, we're still being taped tonight. This is a
Okay.
trial run. If it goes out well, which it may not with some of the things that were said, that that we may go live, but right now, this is just a trial to see if we, first off, are comfortable with it, and for one, I'm comfortable with it. It's not a burden.
It's fine with me. Can I ask, Mr. White, if the acoustics are somewhat improved than we've had in the past? Oh, okay. I'm perfectly comfortable with it.
You know that movie, The Wizard of Oz, where they go past and little guys behind the curtain, they say, don't pay attention to the little guy behind the curtain? Okay, sorry, Bob. Does anybody have any more comments on meeting this room? Because what, Mr. Trudeau? Any comments? I love it when you talk.
As long as you don't catch the disease that the selectmen have, you'll be able to continue to function as a committee.
Somebody quiet that mic immediately. All right,
That's why we're not live.
any new business? See, I broke my pen when we were talking about the remote phone. Any new business, unanticipated items? Liaison reports, any liaison reports before we get into some assignments? None, okay. Last time, we had some people that volunteered for committees. We have capital planning, Mr. Hurd. So
I
you,
need to find out how to get involved in that.
all right, do I need to email the chairman as well as email you? And I'm sorry. Do I need to email the chairman and email you so that I can make an introduction or something along that line? I can do that. And then Dominic is with Guy Campini?
Yes.
Okay.
We've had a few meetings. I'm sorry, when you said liaison reports, we've had a few meetings, really not enough to bring anything forward at the time.
Okay.
But it will be coming.
The next one down's wrong. Harbor Master is not Mrs. Donahue at this point. I think she has, and no offense to the new members, but you give preference to the long-standing members. And Marilyn, I believe, requested the library. Anything else you requested? All right.
I'm happy to do Harbor Master, but I thought someone else might want to. And I'd just like to make a clarification for the benefit of the new members that when we talk about liaison, capital planning actually is a position that is required to have a member of the Finance Committee sit on. As well as the community event. Yeah, community events. The rest of them, when we say liaison, it's just building a relationship. So it doesn't mean you have to go monthly, it just means that you're the contact person if they have questions. I periodically have people call me and say, I don't know who to talk to on the Finance Committee. So if we have a question about that department's budget, you get a little more hands-on. It really is more of a, it is a liaison, but it's not a formal requirement except for those other two committees and any others that may come forth.
In reality, the word liaison's a bad word, and here's why. Some other groups find it not intrusive, but you don't sit at the table. You're just sitting in the audience. You should never be sitting at the table. You're not part of that committee. What I've done in the past, especially as a library liaison and then also the liaison to the MIS, is I've contacted Matt and I've contacted Denise and the chair, and we've had discussions. I showed up to 2 meetings the entire time, but I knew what was going on because they would email me. So that's what I mean by a liaison. Now, there's some that have to be there, obviously, capital planning, and we'll get into that one. Community events, too, as well. But there's other critical ones, too, like the school department, which we'll get into. But there's several that, in my opinion, if you have a relationship with the department head and or the board chairman, then you've accomplished what you wanted to accomplish, or what we've accomplished, and then you can bring back the information as it gives us a head up. So let me move on. Mrs. Catulli, which committee might you be interested in?
Well, like I said, I did say I was giving up my chair on the community events committee because it's just terribly time consuming. It is a committee, you have to be there. As far as my background and things, it doesn't really matter to me. I wouldn't mind dealing with the harbor master because I happen to probably know more about boats out there than most of you guys. And I know him.
put you down as the harbor master. I can't put anything down anymore. No, just leave it alone. We'll get out of here quicker if we don't have to do all this work. Okay, school department. I have any well, no, wait, we'll get into that. Last week you had volunteered for the police department.
Yeah, well, I thought you changed it.
No, I didn't change it. I said if you wanted to do that.
That would be fine.
All right. See now, okay.
Go to the hospitals, you know?
Okay, well, anyway, the school department, who is interested in the school department? This is another one. I'll tell you what, let's go backwards. Community events. I need someone that can go to their meetings and be part of it. Don't everybody jump at once. You've already got one, so you're out. I'm looking at, when do they meet?
They actually changed that date for me, and I don't know whether if they have, I mean, something might be changed to accommodate someone else or themselves, but that date was changed for me at the time.
It's a once-a-month meeting.
Well, because I was not available second and fourth Mondays.
Anyone? Oh, look at you people bailing on me. You know, I have the...
I was holding out for the police or the school.
Okay, well, the school is open. The school is open. No one's... All right, the school? Okay. How about Council on Aging? That one's not too hard.
I'll take that.
Well, but, no. Huh? Well, that's so small. I'll find out. I'll talk to someone at Council Agent on that one. I really need someone on community events. Try it? I knew you would. You're my hero.
Who's that? Joan?
Barbara, Joan Font. If you want to, I'll, if you get with Bonnie, she'll give you the email and who to contact.
I will. I will also give you my binder. That has all the back information in it. 2 years worth, 3 years worth.
10.5 pounds.
It's probably the only thing I haven't burned and thrown away.
Oh, yeah, quit acting like you're doing something right. All right. All right, liaison and updates.
All right, so would you do Council on Aging as who?
Probably me. I'll take that one. What the heck? I had a conflict at one point, but she's no longer the chairman of the Council on Aging, so I have no more conflicts on that one at all. So. All right. Before we approve the minutes, I got a couple things I want to do, and we're not going to hurry out here because there's something else that has to be done as well. We have to meet next week. I hope everybody can be here. Of course you won't. Let's see. So you could call in. Now it's going to rear its ugly head, and I want to get out of this meeting, so you can hold off on that one.
I'm sorry.
Guy Campina is going to come in and talk to us, give us an overview of the new visibility, the operating. He's going to come in and talk to us about that. I'm going to set aside a half hour and try to keep Guy on track for that. The other thing is in order for an article to go on town meeting that concerns CPC, if a town department, town employee, town committee is requesting CPC funds, they have to come before the Board of Selectmen as well as the Finance Committee, and they have to have a sign-off, basically, a letter of approval before they apply or before the article goes on. Has nothing to do with the article.
Before they apply to CPC.
Help me out here.
Yes.
Yeah, an article, they don't have a committee.
Well,
Applying for their funds. Only applying.
got a little bit of a different take on that, but
The policy for any town entity covers anything to do with the town. Town employee, town department, town committee, et cetera. Before they can actually apply to CPC for any funding, they have to come before the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen and get a letter of approval before they make the next step. So if they've contacted CPC and have already been approved, and then come here, it's the reverse. Because the reason for it is, and the policy's put there just in case that something gets committed that the town either can't afford going forward in the future, or goes against where the town's direction is going in. It's never really been followed through. You have two articles with CPC, and I think one of them still has never come before either entity, which is I think the remodeling of the auditorium. So most likely, unless something strange happens, that article probably will not go on the town warrant.
I have a request from the library director, and she could not make this meeting, so next week we will cover
Yeah.
that as well as Guy Campina, and we'll have answers for the ambulance question as well.
We gave the library a half-hearted okay on the playground.
Well, hold on. I'm not going to,
We're not going to go there.
we're not going to go there tonight because our job and your job are two different things.
That's
So we'll cover that before they discuss it next week.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
No
So,
problem.
Mr. Chair, so what you're telling us is that you would like to assign a meeting next week for the 21st?
yes, ma'am, that is
Thank you, sir.
exactly what I'm suggesting, is that, and as far as I know, unless someone has a complete and utter meltdown about it, this is where we'll meet. Are we going live next week, Mr. White? No. Okay. So- Okay. I need a motion to approve the minutes of July 24, 2013. I'll say it again. I need a motion for approval of the weekly minutes from July 24, 2013.
So moved.
For discussion, Kelly, just make the change that I'm not the liaison for Harbor Master. It was actually in the minutes from last month.
Harbor Master, not
Harbor Master.
Harbor Master. Let's try that now. All right, I got a motion. Who made the motion? Mrs. Cattouli made the motion, and Mrs. Donahue made the second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Let's see, we have one abstain. All right, so we had 8-0-1. Okay, before we adjourn, Mr. Goodell has something he would like to say.
Thank you. I've been on this committee for 6 years and 2 months out of a 7-year term. It's been a lot of fun.
David, bring that closer, please.
It's been a lot of fun. Some things that have frustrated me over this time is we fought for 6 years to get an ambulance, something that is inconceivable. It couldn't get past the town administrators. It couldn't get past budgeting. 6 years, and we're finally getting around to an ambulance. That's somewhat frustrating. We had open discussions on a public safety complex, and I watched a select woman, since resigned, manage to stop that possibility. Absolutely amazing that someone would single-handedly try and stop forward progress on a public safety complex. School busing. We got into the problem that we have on school busing because we bought used school buses. We have an inadequate facility to repair them. And we have mechanics that are not thoroughly trained on every single type of bus that you have because you're buying different used buses. 6 years later, we're talking about buying used buses again. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. I just leave that thought with you because eventually we're going to have a problem with these used buses and an accident. At which point everybody's going to pull the Bible out of their desk and say, gosh, if I'd known. We need to belly up on the non-net spending and make it a town issue, not a school issue.
says on number 6, to resurrect capital planning the first year and co-chair with Alan Slavin the second, and to see how vital it has become is gratifying. Number 7, trying to resolve school busing with capital planning was frustrating. The goal was a good one. Number 8, the need for public safety, complex, and initiation of decisions within the framework was really wonderful. My highest respect for our fire chief in Wareham. Overall, it has been a wonderful 6+ years. For our newcomers, the town is relying on your inputs and direction, your ability to work with the TA and selectmen, but not necessarily agree.
I have one thing to say about Mr. Trudell. 4 years ago, I came before this committee as a candidate. I was stonewalled. I didn't even make it past the appointing authority because of politics. The next year, I had several members of this committee stand up for me, and Mrs. Donahue, they're here, and that's how I got on this committee. But if politics reigned in this town, as usual, I would not be on this committee, and I sure in the heck wouldn't be sitting here as a chair, because I had a lot of fire. Everybody that knows me knows I had a lot of fire. Perhaps I took it in the wrong direction from time to time, but the reality is I care about this town, and that man over there cares so much about this town. So, I'm going to miss him. So, thank you for your time and service on this committee.
Dominic and I have been with this man since what we call the Great Quit, okay? So we've come a long way from the very, very start, and I have to commend you in your honesty of, coming before us. You did make a choice to move to another town, not because you were mad at Wareham, but because that's what you needed to do, and I respect that. And to come before this board and turn in your resignation based on the fact that you left the residency here in the town of Wareham, not because you weren't committed to the program. And I just want to thank you for the years that you put in, for being sometimes a father figure for me, and making me speak up for myself, because I didn't talk at all when I first came here. I relied on a lot of other people to give me the inspiration that I needed, and you most certainly did that. So I would personally like to thank you for the years of dedication that you've given to this committee. I thought you were going to make it through the end of the last round with me, but we got other things to take care of too. So thank you.
Wait, I haven't had my say, David. You're not going to take that.
You know that she's going to say
You're not going to take that away from me, because like the other members of the committee, I came on board not really understanding what I was getting into. I was a bleeding heart liberal, and you certainly changed that around. I would not have enjoyed my time here without the lessons that I have learned from you, and how much you have taught me, not just about commitment and caring about this town, but finances, responsibility, fiscal responsibility, and good values. You're a wonderful human being. We're all very grateful that you've served this community. And I'm really sorry that you're not going to be here to see that we're really finally making progress. And I hope that we can report to you in a year or two that your hard work didn't go for nothing, because you've tried so hard, and we'd like to see that.
I've got a cell number, we'll call it.
Thank you, David.
All right. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Trudell. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I don't even know why